The courtroom felt colder than it should have been. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, reflecting off the polished wooden floor. A faint echo of footsteps filled the air as people shuffled to their seats. At the defense table sat Angela Thompson, her hands trembling slightly as she folded and unfolded a stack of worn papers. Her dress was clean but old, her face tired yet dignified, the kind of tired that comes from years of trying, not from giving up. Across from her, the landlord sat with his expensive lawyer, whispering and smirking. Angela could feel their eyes on her like sharp needles. She wasn't supposed to be here, not like this. Not accused of breaking in just because she wanted heat in her apartment for her children. Case number 2489, the bailiff announced. State vs. Angela Thompson. The judge, a tall man with silver hair and deep lines on his face, looked up from his file. Mrs. Thompson, I see you have no attorney present. Angela opened her mouth to speak, but before she could answer, a small hand tugged at her sleeve. Her 10-year-old son, Malik, stood up beside her, barely reaching the height of the table. He wore a clean white shirt and a tie that was too big for him. His voice, though soft, carried across the quiet room. I'm her lawyer, he said. I'm my mom's lawyer. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then a few people in the audience chuckled. Even the landlord's lawyer let out a scoff. But Malik didn't flinch. His chin stayed lifted, his dark eyes unwavering. Angela's heart dropped. Malik, baby, sit down, she whispered urgently, reaching for his arm. But he didn't. He looked straight at the judge, his small hands pressed against the table like he belonged there. Sir, he said, his voice trembling just a little, my mom didn't do anything wrong. She just wanted to keep us warm. The laughter died. The judge studied him for a long moment, then leaned back slowly. Son, he said gently, you can't legally represent your mother in this court. Malik nodded. I know, Your Honor. But, can I still tell the truth? And for a reason he couldn't quite explain, the judge felt the entire courtroom hold its breath. Something, in that little boy's courage, in his mother's tears, told him this wasn't going to be an ordinary case. The judge stared at the boy for a long moment, his pen frozen above the case file. The courtroom had gone utterly silent, even the landlord's smug grin faltered. Angela's heart pounded as she looked from her son to the bench. She could hardly believe what was happening. Malik, she whispered, her voice trembling. Please, sweetheart, sit down. Let mommy handle this. But Malik didn't move. His small frame seemed to grow taller with every word he spoke. They don't want to hear you, Mama. But they'll hear me. The judge finally cleared his throat. Young man, he said, trying to sound firm, though there was a softness beneath his tone, you understand this is a court of law, not a school debate. Yes, sir, Malik replied. But my mom deserves someone to speak for her. If no one else will, I will. A quiet murmur rippled through the gallery, admiration mixed with disbelief. Angela covered her mouth, fighting back tears. She wanted to protect him, to pull him back into the seat, but there was something in his eyes, something fierce and fearless, that stopped her. The judge sighed, removing his glasses. Well, he said at last, you can't act as her lawyer, but I'll allow you to speak. Go ahead, son, tell me what you know. Malik nodded gratefully, then opened the folder his mother had clutched so tightly. The papers shook slightly in his hands, but his voice was steady. I read about tenant rights, he said, sounding almost like an adult. It says landlords have to fix things that are dangerous or broken. My mom called Mr. Davenport's office 5 times about the heater, but nobody came. The landlord's lawyer scoffed, crossing his arms. Your Honor, this is ridiculous. Let him finish, the judge interrupted, his gaze sharp. Malik swallowed hard and looked at the man across the room. We went 3 weeks without heat in December. My little sister got sick. We had to sleep with our coats on. My mom begged for help. His voice cracked just a little. She only went into that office because she thought the repair papers were there. She didn't break in. She just wanted to keep us warm. Angela's tears spilled over. She reached out and touched her son's arm, her lips trembling. Baby, she whispered, her heart breaking and swelling all at once. The judge leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Around them, the room stayed silent. the kind of silence that comes when truth, raw and unpolished, fills the air. For the first time since her arrest, Angela didn't feel ashamed. She felt seen. Through her son's courage, through the strength in his small voice that refused to let the world ignore them any longer. Malik stood there clutching the wrinkled folder, the corners of the papers bent and frayed from being handled too many times. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice carried through the courtroom with surprising strength. "My mom didn't break into anything," he said, his gaze flicking from the landlord to the judge. "She knocked on the door first, but nobody answered. The office door was already open. She just went in to look for the repair orders." The landlord's lawyer leaned forward, sneering. "And how exactly would a 10-year-old know that?" Malik didn't back down. "Because I was there," he said simply. "I was holding her hand." A quiet gasp moved through the spectators. Angela covered her face, her shoulders shaking. Malik took a breath, opened the folder, and began pulling out photos printed from an old phone, pictures of their apartment, cracked walls, a ceiling leak, a thermostat taped together with plastic. "See this," he said, holding up one picture. "That's our heater. It stopped working in December. Mr. Davenport promised he'd fix it, but he didn't. We called, we emailed, we begged. My sister got pneumonia because our apartment was freezing. So my mom went to find the maintenance forms. She thought maybe the landlord just forgot." The lawyer shifted in his seat, uncomfortable now. The judge reached forward to look at the photos. His brow furrowed. "Do you have dates for these pictures, son?" "Yes, sir. They're from December 18th and 19th. Malik pointed to the timestamp at the bottom corner. "That's when my mom sent the last message. He never answered." Angela wiped her eyes, her voice barely audible. "I just wanted to keep my babies warm, Your Honor. That's all." For the first time, the landlord's confident expression cracked. His attorney whispered something, but he stayed silent. Malik turned toward him, his small voice trembling but defiant. "You made fun of my mom because she cleans houses for a living," Malik said. "But she works harder than anybody I know. You don't get to laugh at her. You don't get to call her a criminal." The courtroom went completely still. Even the sound of the ceiling fan seemed to stop. The judge leaned back in his chair, the lines on his face deepening as he looked at the boy. He tapped his pen against the desk once, twice, then said quietly, "This court will take a short recess." But everyone knew the mood in the room had already shifted. The laughter was gone. The arrogance had drained away. For the first time, the truth had a voice, and it came from a little boy who refused to be silent. When the court reconvened, the air felt different, heavier, quieter, charged with something that hadn't been there before. Gone was the smirk on the landlord's face. His lawyer no longer lounged confidently in his chair. Now both men sat stiffly, whispering back and forth while the judge shuffled through the photographs Malik had presented. Angela sat beside her son, still holding his hand. She could feel how small it was inside her own, but somehow it gave her strength. Malik's chin rested against his chest. He looked tired but unbroken. She brushed a hand across his curls and whispered, "You did so good, baby." When the judge finally spoke, his tone carried authority and compassion. "Mr. Davenport," he said, turning to the landlord, "do you have documentation showing that repairs were made to this property?" The lawyer cleared his throat. "Your Honor, we don't have that paperwork present today." "Do you have proof that heat was provided during the winter months?" "No, Your Honor." "And were you aware that a minor living in your property developed pneumonia during this time?" The landlord hesitated, his voice barely audible. I was told something about that, yes." A ripple of disapproval moved through the courtroom. The judge's jaw tightened. "So you ignored repair requests, failed to maintain livable conditions, and then had this woman arrested when she tried to retrieve maintenance forms from your own office?" Angela lowered her eyes, tears threatening again, but the judge's next words made her look up. "It seems the real negligence here," he said slowly, "did not come from this mother." The landlord's lawyer started to object, but the judge raised a hand sharply. "Enough. I will not allow this courtroom to be a playground for intimidation." Malik squeezed his mother's hand. His voice was quiet but steady. "See, Mama, he believes you." The judge turned toward Malik, his expression softening. "Son, I don't think anyone in this room will forget what you did today." Angela's lips trembled. She couldn't find words. Years of being overlooked, dismissed, and spoken over seemed to fall away in that moment. For the first time, someone powerful had truly listened, not just to her, but to the truth she and her children had lived through. When the judge announced his decision, his voice carried finality and respect. The charges against Angela Thompson are dismissed. Furthermore, this court will open an inquiry into the condition of Mr. Davenport's rental properties. Justice will not punish those who struggle to survive, it will protect them. A quiet cheer broke out in the back rows. Someone began clapping softly. Angela covered her mouth with both hands as tears streamed freely down her cheeks. Malik looked up at her, wide-eyed. "We won," he whispered. She nodded, pulling him into her arms. "We won, baby. You won." And as she held him, the landlord stared down at the polished courtroom floor, his power slipping away, while the little boy he'd once mocked had changed everything with nothing but truth and courage. Outside the courthouse, the late afternoon sun hung low, casting a warm, golden glow over the steps. Reporters and bystanders gathered near the entrance, murmuring in disbelief. Moments ago, they had watched a 10-year-old boy stand up to a landlord, a lawyer, and a system that had nearly crushed his family, and win. Angela emerged slowly, one hand clutching Malik's, the other shielding her tear-streaked face from the flashes of cameras. Her knees felt weak, but her heart was light in a way it hadn't been in years. Malik walked proudly beside her, his tie slightly crooked, his small shoes scuffed, but his eyes bright, full of something larger than victory. "Mrs. Thompson, Malik, can we have a word?" A reporter called out. Malik looked up at his mother. She smiled softly. "Go ahead, baby, tell them." He turned to the cameras, his voice clear, his posture straight. "My mom's not a criminal. She's a good person who works hard. I just wanted everyone to know the truth." The crowd fell silent for a moment. No grand speech, no rehearsed lines, just honesty. Then applause began to spread. Someone shouted, "You're a hero, kid." And a few others echoed it. Malik blushed, glancing at his mother, who was already crying again, this time from pure pride. The judge stepped out behind them and paused at the top of the stairs. "Malik," he called out. The boy turned. The older man smiled kindly. "You may not have a law degree yet, son," he said, his voice carrying across the crowd, "but you've already proven what real justice looks like." Angela knelt down and wrapped both arms around Malik. "You hear that?" she whispered, her words trembling. "You're already my lawyer." He hugged her back, pressing his cheek against her shoulder. "I just told the truth, Mama." She smiled through her tears. "That's what good lawyers do." They stood together for a long moment, the world spinning quietly around them, sirens in the distance, camera flashes, city sounds blending with the hum of late-day traffic. But for Angela, everything else faded. All she could feel was her son's small hand in hers and the steady rhythm of his heart, strong, brave, and full of hope. As they walked down the courthouse steps, Malik turned to look back once. The massive doors loomed tall behind him, but he didn't feel small anymore. He wasn't just the boy from the cold apartment, he was the boy who made them listen. Angela smiled through her tears, whispering to herself, "One day, baby, you really will be a lawyer." And as the sun dipped lower, its light wrapped around them like a promise, that truth, no matter how small the voice that speaks it, will always find a way to be heard.